Welcome back to our conversation each week with the Speaker of the House, Charles McCall. Mr. Speaker, good to see you, sir.
Great to be back with you, Scott.
All right. So a lot of people get their news off social media. I'm one of those that sees lots of social media. And this past weekend down at the University of Oklahoma, this picture came up. And I'm just wondering if you want to say a word about the latest graduate from the University of Oklahoma and the future of this young man. Tell us what you know about him.
Well, he's turned out to be a great young man, and it's obviously because of his mother, not because of me. But very proud of my oldest son, Chase McCall, or he's Charles Andrew V, but we've always called him Chase. Finished his MBA with the University of Oklahoma, and super proud of him. And he's graduating with a perfect 4.0 GPA. He wants to pursue banking and the family business, and we're excited about that. He's going to have to go work. I've told him he can't come back to our organization till he goes out and gets some real world experience and works for somebody else. And I think that will be. He was recruited in the MBA program by Bank of Oklahoma, and he's accepted a position there here in Oklahoma City, I believe, starting here in a month or two. So excited for him, very proud of him. And I feel like I'm just proud he took my advice and completed that master's degree, which I was much more stubborn about it towards my father than he was to me. So once again, all Stephanie's doing, she did a great job raising both of our sons.
Well, that's super accomplishment. I've heard about those people with those 4.0 grade point. I never experienced anything like that, but that's impressive. Congratulations to you and Mrs. McCall. Job well done. And sounds like BOK's got themselves a rising star.
He'll make a good hand, I'm sure.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the unknown or the not covered as much this week. There has been quite a bit of discussion about the budget. Before we get to that, there was a lot of discussion. There were people at the Capitol this week dealing with the immigration bill. There has been a lot of emotion on this, and sometimes an emotion gets caught up. Maybe messages get lost or information gets lost to the public. Tell us about your reaction to the concerns that people have about this bill and any sort of messaging that really needs to be reestablished with Oklahomans about this legislation.
Well, it's number one, I've said it before, we're a state and country of laws. We are a state that welcomes legal immigration, and we welcome immigrants to this state that are seeking citizenship and work here, but following the laws of the land to do so. It's unfortunate that the liberal left and many in the media are portraying this piece of legislation as an anti-immigration piece of legislation. It's not anti-immigration. In fact, it's pro-immigration. It's just, but it does address illegal immigration and what is permissible occupation here in the state of Oklahoma. But typical left-leaning organizations and groups spinning the truth and turning this into a political fight that has that just boils down to one thing, and that is the United States and the state of Oklahoma welcome people from all over the world, but you have to come here following the law. And so this week's demonstration was not while everyone's welcome at the Capitol, and we're glad to have everyone. I think some of the messaging up here is based upon a false narrative.
All right, and that law goes into effect July 1, as I recall, and I'm sure we'll not heard the last of this on this topic. All right, so the topic du jour is, of course, the budget negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching Savage sit there for hour after hour. It has become interesting to watch, fascinating, actually, to watch this process. But there's right now the thoughts are and coverage is on the horse race and the back and forth. But I've also got a big calendar in front of me right there. And one of the things that is happening is those days are ticking away. And as I recall, you wanted to get the budget done by X, which would allow the legislature to look at and ponder any vetoes that the governor might have in portions of this budget. That's not being talked about much. Is that still important? Are you getting to the Rubicon on this? And why should people care?
Yeah, the House believed we should have had a budget agreement in the first week of May. Um, Due to Senate processes and negotiations style, we are still uh, in going through the negotiation process. Today is the zero barrier timeline. And if a budget agreement is not reached by today, and we've been at it several days, we've been at it all session. But going past today without a budget agreement, where bills are not dropped by tomorrow night for review over the weekend, will put us in a position where the governor will be able to veto the budget without the legislature having final consideration for overrides. So what's happening today is what's coming to pass is exactly what Greg Treat in the Senate said he would not do, and that is turn over control of the Senate to the governor. But by not having a budget today, budget agreement today, Greg Treat has not only turned over the Senate, control the Senate on the budget to the governor, he's turned over the House, so the entire legislature, which is unfortunate. We should be able to get an agreement by now.
Let me ask you one other question about a topic that had been prevalent all the way up until yesterday and came up a little bit today in the negotiations, and that is the tax cut word, the tax cut phrase. It's been interesting to watch. It's really a negotiation. It's almost like I remember the peace talks and different things around the world, and you see people sparring back and forth. This one's been interesting about the tax cut. One of the things that I've seen continually is not only from the House, but also the governor talking to the Senate about the tax cut. Why do you think that the Senate doesn't just say, all right, we'll put the thing up on the floor for a vote up or down? Why do you think that's so difficult? Are there reasons that you can guess as to what's going on there?
That's one of the great mysteries of the universe, Scott. I mean, it's so simple. It should be easy. But for whatever reason, they refuse to take a vote on it. That's very unfortunate. And there's a lot of good senators. Have the utmost respect for them. Their constituents want to see where they are on the vote at this time. They're tired of people talking about it. They want people to take a vote. The House has done it numerous times over the last 3 years. I believe it passes if they put it up for a vote, but leadership is not allowing their members to take a vote on it for whatever reason. In the House of Representatives, we have a very good pulse in terms of where the people are in the state of Oklahoma. We're up for reelection, all of us, every 2 years. It just creates a big blind spot in the Senate, and I think there's a little bit of. I don't think they like it that the House is calling for a tax cut vote. The governor's calling for a tax cut vote, but this would all be behind us if we just simply take the vote. I'm hopeful there's still a path for a tax cut. There should be. Makes all kinds of sense for a tax cut, and then beyond, putting us on a path to zero as the economy continues to expand. That empowers Oklahomans more with their money. That attracts more talent and people to the state of Oklahoma in terms of workforce, and it attracts large sums of investment to the state of Oklahoma. That's what we want to do. Those are the outcomes we want to see economically in the state of Oklahoma for the people. We want them to be more prosperous. We want them to have greater opportunity, and we want Oklahoma to be the best place for business, not just in this region, but in the country. We say all of these things, but but the Senate just can't seem to do the simplest of things to achieve those type of outcomes.
Final question to put you on the spot here would be this. You know, the House came up with your live portal. The Senate has had their transparency measures. You know, this is going to be Speaker Hilbert's problem and Pro Tem McCourtney's problem in 2025. Do you think live streaming the proceedings like this in these negotiations deserves to be reconsidered going forward? Do you think it's helped, hurt, or we just don't know?
Well, I think well, first of all, I think when it comes to, you know, just the public being able to see, you know, what's going on in the process of interest, I think that's important. And I appreciate all those who have covered the budget negotiations. There are some dynamics, you know, when there are cameras in a room and elected officials in the room, sometimes that can be a distraction. Sometimes there is, I mean, there's good and bad about it. I think the reality this year is we don't have a budget yet because the Senate made a change in leadership late in the game. This budget would have already been across the line and done. And it could have been live streamed, but we've, you know, going forward, I think there'll be assessment of it and what makes sense. And there's very varying articles out there in the media regarding this and the Senate's new process. But, you know, some of these processes take time, and but the people of the state of Oklahoma changed the constitutions sometime back to give us only 4 months out of the year to get things done. And a budget is the only constitutional requirement we have. So I would say it's you know, people have, if anybody thought that there was something going on behind the veil, behind the closed doors or whatnot, they've really got to see a good look of what a budget negotiation looks like. And being in that room and talking through those line items and talking about the things that each chamber wants to do, that's good. That's not a problem. But just, you know, the little, you know, snarky comments and the cheap jabs and talking about things that don't, you know, of yesteryear don't really amount to anything in getting a budget done for this year. And I'm super proud of the House team. They're in there staying on topic on the items and getting those things worked out. Hopefully everybody will kind of temper the dialogue a little bit and let's talk about just what the state of Oklahoma needs. The people of the state of Oklahoma get the budget agreed to and finalized and get it delivered on time.
Well, it's still a cliffhanger. So whenever or wherever it picks back up, we appreciate your input, keeping us informed, Mr. Speaker.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be here and available to negotiate and work on that budget until it's done. And so we hope that the Senate, the governor will stay focused and stay at it until it's completed and we can finish up this session.
All right. We'll check back in with you when it gets done. And thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you, Scott.